In the shadow of a golden throne, a secret carved in blood and bone, identity stolen before I could speak, a kingly face for a life so bleak. They must be down to the river's edge, behind the stone and the ivy hedge. A velvet room turns to cold gray bars, while my twin brother counted all the stars. I heard the heavy sound of the hammer strike, occasional steel for the soul alike.
Alright, this here's Chapter 3, Political Rivals. D'Artagnan had promised de Bassamio to return in time for dessert, and he kept his word. They had just reached the finer and more delicate class of wines and liquors with which the governor's cellar had the reputation of being most admirably stocked, when the spurs of the captain resounded in the corridor and he himself appeared at the threshold. Athos and Aramis had played a close game. Neither had been able to gain the slightest advantage over the other. They had supped, talked a good deal about the Bastille, of the last journey to Fontainebleau, of the intended fête that M. Fouquet was about to give at Vaux. They had generalized on every possible subject, and no one, excepting Bassamio, had alluded to private matters. D'Artagnan arrived in the very midst of the conversation, still pale and disturbed by his interview with the king. Bassamio hastened to give him a chair, and D'Artagnan accepted a glass of wine and set it down empty. Athos and Aramis both remarked his emotion. As for Bassamio, he saw nothing more than the captain of the king's musketeers, to whom he endeavored to show every attention. To be near the king entitled anyone to all privileges in the eyes of de Bassamio. But although Aramis had remarked that emotion, he had not been able to guess the cause of it. Athos alone believed that he had detected it. To him, D'Artagnan's return, and particularly the manner in which he, usually so impassive, seemed overcome, signified, I have just asked the king something which he has refused me. Thoroughly convinced that his conjecture was correct, Athos smiled, rose from the table, and made a sign to D'Artagnan, as if to remind him that they had something else to do than to sup together. D'Artagnan immediately understood him and replied by another sign. Aramis and Bassamio watched this silent dialogue and looked inquiringly at each other. Athos felt that he was called upon to give an explanation of what was passing. The truth is, my friends, an explanation of what was passing. The truth is, my friends, said Comte de la Fere with a smile, that you, Aramis, have been supping with a state criminal, and you, de Bassamio, with your prisoner. Bassamio uttered an exclamation of surprise and almost of delight. That worthy man took pride in his fortress. Profit aside, the more prisoners he had, the happier he was. And the higher the prisoners were in rank, the prouder he felt. Aramis assumed an expression which he thought the situation required, and said, Well, dear Athos, forgive me, but I almost suspected what has happened. Some prank of Raoul or Lavalier, is it not? Alas, said Bassamio, and continued, Aramis, you, a high and powerful nobleman as you are, forgetful that there are now only courtiers, you have been to the king and told him what you thought of his conduct. Yes, you have guessed right. So that, said Bartholomew, trembling at having supped so familiarly with a man who had fallen into disgrace with the king, so that Monsieur the Count, so that my dear governor, said Athos, my friend D'Artagnan will communicate to you the contents of the paper which I perceive just peeping out of his belt, and which, assuredly, can be nothing else than the order for my incarceration. Bartholomew held out his hand with his accustomed eagerness. D'Artagnan drew two papers from his belt, and presented one of them to the governor, who unfolded it, and then read in a low tone of voice, looking at Athos over the paper as he did so, and pausing from time to time, order to detain in my chateau of Bastille, M. le Comte de la Fère. Oh, monsieur, this is indeed a very melancholy honor for me. You will have a patient prisoner, monsieur, said Athos, in his calm, soft voice. A prisoner, too, who will not remain a month with you, my dear governor, said Aramis, while Bartholomew, still holding the order in his hand, transcribed it upon the prison registry. Not a day, or rather not even a night, said D'Artagnan, displaying the second order of the king. For now, dear de Bartholomew, you will have the goodness to transcribe also this order for setting the count immediately at liberty. Ah, said Aramis, it is a labor that you have spared me, D'Artagnan, and he pressed the musketeer's hand in a significant manner, and that of Athos at the same time. What? Said the latter in astonishment. The king sets me at liberty? Read, my dear friend, returned D'Artagnan. Athos took the order and read it. It is quite true, he said. Are you sorry for it? Asked D'Artagnan. Oh, no. On the contrary, I wish the king no harm, and the greatest evil or misfortune that anyone can wish kings is that they should commit an act of injustice. But you have had a difficult and painful task, I know. Tell me, have you not, D'Artagnan? Aye, not at all, said the musketeer, laughing. The king does everything I wish him to do. Aramis looked fixedly at D'Artagnan and saw that he was not speaking the truth. But Bartholomew had eyes for nothing but D'Artagnan. So great was his admiration for a man who could make the king do all he wished. And does the king exile Athos? Inquired Aramis. No, not precisely. The king did not explain himself upon that subject, replied D'Artagnan, but I think the count could not do better, unless indeed he wishes particularly to thank the king. No, indeed, replied Athos, smiling. Well then, I think, resumed D'Artagnan, that the count cannot do better than to retire to his own chateau. However, my dear Athos, you have only to speak to tell me what you want. If any particular place of residence is more agreeable to you than another, I can obtain it for you. No, thank you, said Athos. Nothing can be more agreeable to me, my dear friend, than to return to the solitude beneath my noble trees on the banks of the Loire. If heaven be the overruling physician of the evils of the mind, nature is a sovereign remedy. And so, monsieur, continued Athos, turning again towards Baisemeaux, I am now free, I suppose. Yes, monsieur, the count, I think so. At least I hope so, said the governor, turning over and over the two papers in question, unless, however, D'Artagnan has a third order to give. No, my dear Baisemeaux, no, said the musketeer. The second is quite enough. We can stop there. Ah, monsieur. Ah, monsieur the count, said Baisemeaux, addressing Athos, you do not know what you are losing. I should have placed you at 30 livres, like the generals. What am I saying? I mean at 50 livres, like the princes, and you would have supped every evening as you have supped tonight. Allow me, monsieur, said Athos, to prefer my mediocrity, and then, turning to D'Artagnan, he said, let us go, my friend, let us go, said D'Artagnan. Shall I have the happiness of having you as my companion? To the city gate only, replied D'Artagnan. After which I will tell you what I told the king. I am on duty. And you, dear Aramis, said Athos, smiling, will you accompany me? La Ferre is on the road to Vannes. Thank you, my dear friend, said Aramis, but I have an appointment in Paris this evening, and I cannot leave without very serious interests suffering by my absence. In that case, said Athos, I must say adieu and take my leave of you. My dear Baisemeaux, I have to thank you exceedingly for your goodwill, and particularly for the specimen you have given me of the Bastille fare. And having embraced Aramis and shaken hands with Baisemeaux, and having received their wishes for an agreeable journey from them both, Athos set off with D'Artagnan. When once these two guests had departed, Baisemeaux did not in the least perceive that the conversation suffered by their absence. He thought that wine after supper, and that of the Bastille in particular, was excellent, and that it was a stimulant quite sufficient to make an honest man talk. But he little knew his greatness, who was never more impenetrable than at dessert. His greatness, however, perfectly understood Baisemeaux when he reckoned on making the governor discourse by the means which the latter regarded as efficacious. The conversation, therefore, without flagging in appearance, flagged in reality. For Baisemeaux not only had it nearly all to himself, but further kept speaking only of that singular event, the incarceration of Athos, followed by so prompt an order to set him again at liberty. Nor, moreover, had Baisemeaux failed to observe that the order of arrest and that of liberation were both in the king's hand. But the king would not take the trouble to write such orders except under pressing circumstances. All this was very interesting, and above all, very puzzling to Baisemeaux. But as, on the other hand, All this was very clear to Aramis. The latter did not attach to the occurrence the same importance as did the worthy governor. Besides, Aramis rarely put himself out of the way for anything, and he had not yet told Basamiu for what reason he had now done so. And so, at the very climax of Basamiu's dissertation, Aramis suddenly interrupted him. "Tell me, my dear Basamiu," said he, "have you never any other diversions at the Bastille than those at which I have assisted during the 2 or 3 visits I have had the honor to pay you?" This address was so unexpected that the governor, like a vein which suddenly receives an impulsion opposed to that of the wind, was quite dumbfounded at it. "Diversions," said he, "but I take them continually, monsieur." "Oh, to be sure. And these diversions are of every kind. Visits, no doubt." "No, not visits. Visits are not frequent at the Bastille." "What? Are visits rare then?" "Very rare, even on the part of your society." "What do you mean by my society? The prisoners?" "Oh, no. Your prisoners, indeed, I know well. It is you who visit them, and not they you. By your society, I mean, my dear Basamiu, the society of which you are a member." Basamiu looked fixedly at Aramis, and then, as if the idea which had flashed across his mind were impossible, "Oh," he said, "I have very little society at present. If I must own it to you, my dear D'Herblay, the fact is, to stay at the Bastille appears for the most part distressing and distasteful to persons of the gay world. As for the ladies, it is never without a dread, which costs me infinite trouble to allay, that they come to my quarters. And indeed, how should they avoid trembling a little, poor things, when they see these gloomy dungeons, and reflect that they are inhabited by prisoners who, in proportion as the eyes of Basamiu concentrated their gaze on the face of Aramis, the worthy governor's tongue faltered more and more, until finally it stopped altogether. "No, you don't understand me, my dear Basamiu. You don't understand me. I do not at all mean to speak of society in general, but of a particular society, of the society, in a word, to which you are affiliated." Basamiu nearly dropped the glass of muscat which he was in the act of raising to his lips. "Affiliated?" cried he. "Affiliated? Yes, affiliated, undoubtedly," reported Aramis, with the greatest self-possession. "Are you not a member of a secret society, my dear Basamiu?" "Secret? Secret or mysterious? Oh, Mr. D'Herblay, see you don't deny that. See you don't deny it. But believe me, I believe what I know. I swear to you. Listen to me, my dear Basamiu. I say yes. You say no. One of us two necessarily says what is true, and the other, it inevitably follows what is false. Well, and then, Well, we shall come to an understanding presently. Let us see, said Bartholomew. Let us see. Now drink your glass of muscat, dear Bartholomew, said Aramis. What the devil? You look quite scared. No, no, not the least in the world. No. Drink then. Bartholomew drank, but he swallowed the wrong way. Well, resumed Aramis, if I say you are not a member of a society, secret or mysterious, whichever you like to call it, the epithet is of no consequence. If I say you are not a member of a society similar to that I wish to designate, well then, you will not understand a word of what I am going to say. That is all. Oh, be sure beforehand that I shall not understand anything. Well, well, try now. Let us see. That is what I am going to do. If, on the contrary, you are one of the members of this society, you will immediately answer me yes or no. Begin your questions then, continued Bartholomew, trembling. You will agree, dear Bartholomew, continued Aramis, with the same impassiveness, that it is evident a man cannot be a member of a society. It is evident that he cannot enjoy the advantages it offers to the affiliated without being himself bound to certain little services. In short, stammered Bartholomew, that would be intelligible if, well, resumed Aramis, there is, in the society of which I speak, and of which, as it seems, you are not a member. Allow me, said Bartholomew. I should not like to say absolutely. There is an engagement entered into by all the governors and captains of fortresses affiliated to the order. Bartholomew grew pale. Now, the engagement, continued Aramis firmly, is of this nature. Bartholomew rose, manifesting unspeakable emotion. Go on, dear D'Herblay. Go on, said he. Aramis then spoke, or rather recited, the following sentence, in the same tone as if he had been reading it from a book. The aforesaid captain or governor of a fortress shall allow to enter, when need shall arise, and on demand of the prisoner, a confessor affiliated to the order. He stopped. Bartholomew was quite distressing to look at, being so wretchedly pale and trembling. Is not that the text of the agreement? Quietly asked Aramis. Monsieur, began Bartholomew. Ah, well, you begin to understand, I think, monsieur, cried Bartholomew. Do not trifle so with my unhappy mind. I find myself nothing in your hands. If you have to malignant desire to draw from me the little secrets of my admiration, oh, by no means. Pray, undecisive yourself, dear Bartholomew. It is not the little secrets of your administration that I aim at, but those of your conscience. Well then, my conscience be it, my dear D'Herblay, but have some consideration for the situation I am in, which is no ordinary one. It is no ordinary one, my dear monsieur, continued the inflexible Aramis. If you are a member of this society, but it is quite a natural one if, free from all engagements, you are answerable only to the king. Well, monsieur, well, I obey only the king. Good God. Whom else would you have a French gentleman obey? Aramis did not yield an inch, but with that silvery voice of his continued, "It is very pleasant for a French gentleman, for a prelate of France, to hear a man of your mark express himself so loyally. Dear de Bossemeaux, and having heard you, to believe no more than you do, have you doubted, monsieur? I? Oh, no. And so you doubt no longer. I have no longer any doubt that such a man as you, monsieur, said Aramis gravely, does not faithfully serve the masters whom he voluntarily chose for himself." "Masters!" cried Bossemeaux. "Yes, masters," I said. "D'Herblay, you are still jesting, are you not?" "Oh, yes, I understand that it is a more difficult position to have several masters than one. But the embarrassment is owing to you, my dear Bossemeaux, and I am not the cause of it." "Certainly not," returned the unfortunate governor, more embarrassed than ever. "But what are you doing? You are leaving the table. Assuredly, are you going?" "Yes, I am going. But you are behaving very strangely towards me, monsieur." "I am behaving strangely in what respect?" "Have you sworn, then, to put me to the torture?" "No, I should be sorry to do so." "Remain, then." "I cannot." "And why?" "Because I have no longer anything to do here, and indeed I have duties to fulfill elsewhere." "Duties so late at this?" "Yes. Understand me now, my dear Bossemeaux. They told me at the place whence I came, the aforesaid governor or captain will allow to enter, as need shall arise, on the prisoner's demand. A confessor affiliated with the order. I came. You do not know what I mean, and so I shall return to tell them that they are mistaken, and that they must send me elsewhere." What you are, cried Bossemeaux, looking at Aramis almost in terror. "The confessor affiliated to the order," said Aramis, without changing his voice, but gentle as the words were. They had the same effect on the unhappy governor as a clap of thunder. Bossemeaux became livid, and it seemed to him as if Aramis's beaming eyes were two forks of flame, piercing to the very bottom of his soul. "The confessor," murmured he. "You, monsieur, the confessor of the order?" "Yes, I. But we have nothing to unravel together, seeing that you are not one of the affiliated, monsieur, and I understand that not being so, you refuse to comply with his commands." "Monsieur, I beseech you, condescend to hear me." "And wherefore, monsieur? I do not say that I have nothing to do with this society. Aha! I say not that I refuse to obey. Nevertheless, Bossemeaux, what is past wears very much the air of resistance." "Oh, no, monsieur, no. I only wished to be certain." "To be certain of what?" said Aramis, in a tone of supreme contempt. "Of nothing at all, monsieur." Bossemeaux lowered his voice, and bending before the prelate, said, I am at all times and in all places at the disposal of my masters. But, very good. I like you better thus, monsieur, said Aramis, as he resumed his seat and put out his glass to Baisemeaux, whose hand trembled so that he could not fill it. You were saying, but, continued Aramis. But, replied the unhappy man, having no notice, I was far from expecting. Does not the gospel say, watch for the moment is known only of God? Do not the rules of the order say watch for that which I will? You ought always to will also. And on what pretext is it that you did not expect the confessor, Baisemeaux? Because, monsieur, there is at present in the Bastille no prisoner ill. Aramis shrugged his shoulders. What do you know about that? Said he. But nevertheless, it appears to me, Baisemeaux, said Aramis, turning round in his chair. Here is your servant, who wishes to speak with you. And at this moment, Baisemeaux's servant appeared at the threshold of the door. What is it? Asked Baisemeaux sharply. Monsieur, said the man, they are bringing you the doctor's return. Aramis looked at Baisemeaux with a calm and confident eye. Well, said Baisemeaux, let the messenger enter. The messenger entered, saluted, and handed in the report. Baisemeaux ran his eye over it, and raising his head, said in surprise, No, Bertaudier is ill. How was it, then, said Aramis carelessly, that you told me everybody was well in your hotel, Baisemeaux? And he emptied his glass without removing his eyes from Baisemeaux. The governor then made a sign to the messenger, and when he had quitted the room, said, still trembling, I think that there is in the article on the prisoner's demand. Yes, it is so, answered Aramis. But see what it is they want with you now. At that moment, a sergeant put his head in at the door. What do you want now? Cried Baisemeaux. Can you not leave me in peace for 10 minutes, monsieur? Said the sergeant. Monsieur, said the sergeant, the sick man, number 2, Bertaudier, has commissioned the turnkey to request you to send him a confessor. Now Baisemeaux very neatly sank on the floor, but Aramis disdained to reassure him, just as he had disdained to terrify him. What must I answer? Inquired Baisemeaux. Just what you please, replied Aramis, compressing his lips. That is your business. I am not governor of the Bastille. Tell the prisoner, cried Baisemeaux quickly, tell the prisoner that his request is granted. The sergeant left the room. Oh, monsieur, murmured Baisemeaux. How could I have suspected? How could I have foreseen this? Who told you to suspect? And who asked you to foresee? Contemptuously answered Aramis. The order suspects, the order knows. The order foresees. Is not that enough? What do you command? Added Baisemeaux. Nothing at all. I am nothing but a poor priest, a simple confessor. Have I your orders to go and see the sufferer? Oh, monsieur, I do not order. I pray you to go. 'Tis well. Then conduct me to him.